أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. So we started this journey. We talked about why we should assess our root belief system. We mentioned that this wudda that we have, this particular love that we have, that has brought us to the tent of Abu Abdullah, it's actually sourced in the faith and the a'mal salih of Abu Abdullah. The thing which has brought us to his tent is none but him himself. We also said that if you want to see how great something is, look at how great its effect is. If you want to see how great his faith is and his a'mal are, then look at the effect that these have over the 1,400 years and continuing. We also said that this love forms a root within us that yields in a tree that has some fruits. And we saw examples of people who had an image of a tree. And when it came time to taste the fruits, well, this image just wasn't enough. So we said we have to assess the belief system. We continued then, and we said, well, what affects this belief system? We said perhaps the root has termites. And these termites we called waswas. Initially, we started talking about what these termites are. We said they are non-divine whispers. Okay? We identify that these non-divine whispers, they affect man at 3 levels. The level of the action, issues like najasa, tahara. The level of relationships, and yesterday I encouraged you guys to go to Risalatul Huquq and see the various types of relationships man has that we don't often think of. And thirdly, waswas affects man at the level of the root belief system. In all cases, we saw that waswas, its particular effect was what? It was pushing man to transgress, to go beyond the bounds that man is allowed to go till. There's a border that Allah has created, there's a border that particular relationship has to maintain, and man says, it's my way or the highway, and it crosses that line. Waswas's effect was then transgression at all 3 levels. We talked about that. We also mentioned this idea and notion of the heart of the mu'min having 2 ears. And we equated that to 2 landing strips. Development of one of these negated the development of the other. And it also caused a greater input from the same type of cargo, be it divine inspiration or non-divine whispers. So after we saw that, we went forward and said, okay, let's see how waswas affects the root belief system. And we saw how it affects actions, we saw how it affects relationships. So let's go see how it affects your root belief system. Okay. We started the discussion off as saying what? We said that our beliefs are many, but our root beliefs are 3. What were the 3? We have the origin, which is Tawheed. We have the destination, which is ma'ad or qiyamah. And then we had the in between, this divine wilaya. And what was the purpose of this divine wilaya? It was to take man towards the right destination. And what was this destination? This destination was the return to the origin, Tawheed. We saw what our three root belief systems are like. Then we said, okay, let's see how waswas comes and affects these root belief systems. It first comes and it separates the three. They're no longer a system. They're seen as independent entities. It's no longer the case that now when waswas has affected the belief system, the divine wilaya is taking you from where you are to the right destination, which is in fact the return to the origin. Rather, the divine wilaya becomes an independent entity. Tawheed too becomes then an independent entity, not in this particular framework of the three root belief systems. And we saw what that does. When these three were separated, we gave the example when we find often when we go to Hajj and Mecca and we go to the Ziyarat in Medina, we find this often. Those individuals whose root belief system had termites, has waswas within it, they've separated the three, Tawheed from divine wilaya. They start asking questions like, is asking the Holy Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt in line with Tawheed or not? And we answered that. We said, in fact, tawassul is sourced in Tawheed. We went further. We said that there's another extreme which we find closer to ourselves as well. In this particular case, again, waswas comes and it separates the three root belief systems. Tawheed, the origin, from the destination, and those two from the in-between. When it did that, what happened? Divine wilaya was no longer the hand pointing towards Tawheed. It gained its own independence. It became the origin and it became the destination in the wrong sense. So what happens when waswas came and it caused an imbalance at the root belief system level? This imbalance, and we highlighted and highlighted again, and I'll highlight it one more time. It's an imbalance. This imbalance in the root belief system caused an imbalance in man's actions. This particular person, what did he do? The apparent norms of the divine wali, the apparent norms of the Imam Ma'soom, this person said, what? He said, I think I could do it better. And he replaces it with something else. We said the Ahlul Bayt, when they greeted one another, how did they greet one another? They said, Assalamu alaikum. This person, instead of looking at the Ahlul Bayt as a source of guidance, as a source of mercy, and as a light that takes away from darkness, one which we must follow, he says, when I greet another person, I will say, Ya Ali. And we said, Ya Ali is a good thing to say. It's an ibadah to say. The mention of Imam Ali is something that has fragrance in it. But We said the Ahlul Bayt also knew this. They themselves also knew this. We ourselves learned it from them, that the mention of Imam Ali is ibadah. So when it comes time to following in their footsteps, we shouldn't transgress. Where they chose to say salam, we shouldn't come and add something of our own. We saw a second effect. That if waswas started to affect at the root belief system of imama, what happened? There was an imbalance. And this imbalance in the root belief system caused an imbalance in our actions too. The second example that I gave was we strive to lift the alam and we strive to lift the tabut. But when it came for our salah, we weren't striving to lift ourselves up. Remember, lifting the alam in the love of Abu Abdullah, is it a good thing? Absolutely it is. Lifting the tabut in the love of Abu Abdullah, is it a good thing? Absolutely it is. We said, and we'll identify it and highlight it one more time, it's an imbalance. This love gets displayed in some places, but in other places, not so much. We said we strike our chest in the love of Abdullah, but we don't strike ourselves when we're going towards sin. Both things being in line with divine guidance. Both things being in line with this wudda that we have. And the last effect, the most dangerous of them all, we mentioned last. Sometimes, in an attempt to praise them, we end up belittling them without knowing that we're belittling them. We said somebody who doesn't know and doesn't know that he doesn't know, that's a dangerous person. We said when you take examples of things that someone is capable of doing, we gave the example of a person and said that this person is capable of buttoning his shirt up. He's capable of chewing his food. But if you take these examples and you associate them as his apex virtue, this person is known by these traits. And all of a sudden you are, in fact, belittling the person. We said the Ahlul Bayt, the Imams, are not confined in their virtues to a throwing of a door or the killing of the masses or the courage they had on a battlefield. Although these are true traits for the Ma'sumin. They're true traits for the Ma'sumin. But you don't place these traits as their apex virtue. Then we gave an example. We said, what is an apex virtue? Well, this divine velaya was something that was meant to lead us to the origin. It was sourced in the origin. So we said, one of its apex virtues then is the virtue of the origin itself. We said in one of the du'as, we said Allah has af on us, has forgiveness towards us, even though He has all the qudra. We do hamd of Allah in this particular way. This is one of the virtues of Allah that we mention in dua iftitah. We said if this divine wali is sourced in the origin, then the virtues of the origin are the apex virtues of this divine wali. He is the manifestation. He is the one who makes apparent the virtues of the origin, the virtues of Tawheed, the virtues of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salawat, please. So now we got an understanding of how waswas affects the root belief system. We also got an understanding of the proper placement of imama in the root belief system. And the next talk, the talk for today, is now seeing the intrinsic versus extrinsic discussions on imamate and what their effects are. Now, what is an intrinsic discussion and what's an extrinsic discussion? We start with the extrinsic one, a discussion from outside the thing. We are not going in it yet. In this method, in theology, you are aiming to prove the actuality of the belief system itself. So in the case of Tawheed, for example, the extrinsic discussion, you're using your intellect to now prove that there must be a God. There must be a wajib. We don't use textual proofs here. Your audience is not a Muslim yet. Your methodology you use is common to your audience. You're going towards just believing, just going towards proving the belief that the origin exists. This is an extrinsic discussion from the outside yet. You haven't gone in, you haven't believed yet, you haven't gone towards the effects. That leads us to then an extrinsic discussion on Nabuwah. Once we finish the discussion on Tawheed, on the outer sense, then we go towards a discussion on Nabuwah. This particular discussion goes something like this. We break Nabuwah down into two separate sections. We say Nabuwah in the general sense, we'll talk about certain things, and Nabuwah in the specific sense. Nabuwah Am and Nabuwah Khas. In the Nabuwah Am, what do? We say, is there really a need for an Nabi or not? Again, our audience is not necessarily Muslims and Shias and so on and so forth. Here we even are conversing with people like Brahmins who say, no, there is no necessity for a Nabi to come. Okay. At this level, we use our intellectual arguments to prove the necessity of a Nabi. We go further. We say, okay, now that there must be a Nabi intellectually, how do you identify a Nabi? How do you identify this divine wali? I use the word Nabi here. Use it synonymously right now for the Imam as well. How do I identify this divine velaya? Okay. You say, well, there are three particular ways. You either have text, you have context, or you have hypertext. What are these three? Either you find yourself in the shoes of Salman Farsi and you have text, you have the guidance from Nabi Isa in the Christian faith telling you that there will be a Nabi coming forward. So you have text guiding you towards something. Signs that this person will come and he'll have these signs and this is where he will occur and so on and so forth. So you find yourself in the shoes of either Salman Farsi, where you use the text now to reach the Nabi. Or you find yourself in the position of Lady Khadija. And now you use the context to get to the Nabi. You analyze the position of the Nabi, the characteristics of this particular person, the attributes that this person holds, and that's what leads you to the Nabi himself. And the third way is the hypertext. What's the hypertext? You find yourself in the position of those companions who converted to Islam, who believed in the Holy Prophet after he showed them a miracle. Now it goes beyond the text. It's hypertext. the route of the mu'jiza. Now, in our belief system, in the extrinsic manner of looking at the belief system, we have these discussions. And you put these discussions in their particular places. This goes on and on until you reach Ma'ad, Qiyamah, all the way to the end. But what have you really done in this particular type of discussion? You've got the knowledge of the existence of these things. But that knowledge is not sufficient. It's not enough to just know that this particular system intellectually must exist in this particular manner. All you've done is you've created the presence of the mind for yourself regarding our belief system. You go through these methodologies, and now you've created the presence of the mind regarding your belief system. Conceptually, you know how things work. Let's give it an analogy. This analogy will also show you the effects of this understanding as well, and how limited the effects are. So you go out and you want to put bookshelves all around. Okay? You go buy these bookshelves and you open up the packaging and you find a pamphlet in it that has a picture of the instruction manual. You go and you read through the instruction manual completely from cover to cover. Now you know exactly where each piece fits and how it fits. Is that sufficient for you to now have a bookshelf? No, it's not. But that does give you the presence of the mind. It is needed. You can't skip that step, or you might end up with a lot of pieces left over, God forbid. So having this is important, but it's not enough. The max effect of having this extrinsic understanding of Imamate is what? Is the concept of the presence of the mind. You have a conceptual understanding of your belief system, and that's it. That's as far as this mechanism can take you. That is its limits. That's it. So now let's look at some individuals who were stuck at this level. The first individual we look at is an interesting character. Let me introduce him a little bit. He is somebody who interacted and talked to the angels, but he's stuck at this level. He interacted and heard the advices and teachings of every divine wali, from Nabi Adam till to this date. He's somebody who was there and heard the revelations for all divine books. So he has a lot of conceptual understandings. Who is this person? Let me recite the verse and then maybe you'll find out who this person is. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. كمثل الشيطان. Allah is telling us an example of this person, Shaitan. Look at him. إذ قال للإنسان كفر. He comes to man and he says to insan, what? He says, transgress. Do kufr. Do an evil deed. deny Allah. Okay. فَلَمَّا كَفَرَ, when man listens to him and man denies Allah, look what shaitan says. He has a conceptual understanding. Look at what shaitan says. قَالَ, so this is now shaitan saying, إِنِّي بَرِيءٌ مِّنْكَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهَ رَبَّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Now shaitan turns to the man and says, I am bari from you. I want to stay away from you. I'm scared of Allah, the Rabb of the Alameen. Look how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran, whenever claims are mentioned, Allah right away in the verses after fixes those claims. If the claims are false, He points to it right away. Look how in the next verse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us what happens to this person stuck at the conceptual level of understanding his root belief system. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? فَكَأَنَّ عَاقِبَتَهُمَا أَنَّهُمَا فِي النَّارِ. He says, the end results of both of these people, huma, what is the end results of both of these people? Who are these people? The one who said, do kufr of Allah, and the one who did the kufr of Allah. Who said, do the kufr of Allah? Shaitan. Who did it? Insan. What is the result of both of these people? أنهما في النار. At what degree? At what level? خالدين فيها. خالدين فيها. Both of these people are eternally in the nar, in the hellfire. This person, shaitan, had a conceptual understanding. He had the presence of the mind when it came to understanding the belief systems. A person who stops at the conceptual understanding only, whilst knowing what the right thing is, and doesn't progress further, what have they done? They have done dhulm to that particular understanding. Now look how the verse ends. وَذَلِكَ جَزَاءُ الظَّالِمِينَ. Allah saying, this particular conclusion of both being in the hellfire, it's not limited to just shaitan and this person that he said to do kufr. It goes beyond that. This is the jaza. This is the just deserts. This is the naturally occurring outcome of dhulm. What is dhulm? It's a transgression. It's the effect of waswas that we've been talking about in the past few nights. وَذَلِكَ جَزَاءُ الظَّالِمِينَ. One more example. This example is of a different person. It's closer to home. At least the same type of person. It's not shaitan. It's a human. Okay? When Nabi Ibrahim approaches this tyrant king, let's look at the discussion that's taking place between Nabi Ibrahim and this person. And let's see how the Quran, Allah knows what's in the hearts of the people, right? Let's look at how Allah describes the effects and the internals of that particular audience of Nabi Ibrahim at that time. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alam tara ila alladhi hajja Ibrahim fi rabbih. Have you not seen the one who did ihtijaj with Ibrahim, who had a discourse with Ibrahim regarding his Rabb? An atahu Allahu mulk. When Allah had, even though this person, Allah had given him this particular mulk. I'm summarizing the translation. I'm paraphrasing the translation. إِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبِّ الَّذِي يُحْيِي وَيُمِيتُ. Nabi Ibrahim comes and says, My Rabb is the one who gives life and takes life, gives life and gives death. This person says what? قال أنا أحيي وأميت. He said, I could give life and take life too. I could set a prisoner free who was supposed to be on the chopping block, now given life. And I could take a free man and put him on the chopping block. And I've taken life. He's trying to now become argumentative with Nabi Ibrahim. Up until now, if you notice, Nabi Ibrahim has been talking about rububiyyah, trying to trying to reach the heart of this person, saying that listen, you're not sustaining yourself. But when he sees this guy is becoming argumentative, the tone changes slightly. Nabi Ibrahim doesn't use the word Rabb anymore. Look what he uses. Qala Ibrahim. Nabi Ibrahim says, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْتِ بِالشَّمْسِ مِنَ الْمَشْرِقِ فَأْتِ بِهَا مِنَ الْمَغْرِبِ. Allah, no, you don't Rabb anymore. Says too late. Next step. Allah brings the Shams, the sun, from Maghrib. If you're true in your claim that I'm false and indeed you are the Lord and the God of these people, if you're true in your claim, Ana Rabbukumul A'la, if you're true in your claim that you are the God, you are the true creator and the sustainer and so on and so forth, do the opposite, please. Now, if it stopped here, we wouldn't know what effect this had on the person. But Allah tells us what effect this had on the person. The verse continues, فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ. What does that mean? He was left baffled. He understood at that point that really his claim is quite false. Up until now, because of the respect he was getting from the people and the position he was there, he was surrounded by yes men. He had fooled himself to even think that he was truly a God. Now enforced with one real man before him, this Nabi, this Ummat, really, Nabi Ibrahim, he's stuck. فَبُهِتَ الَّذِي كَفَرَ. These are the effects of those people who are stuck in the presence of the mind. They have a conceptual understanding of what's going on. This guy, after Nabi Ibrahim talked to him, he conceptually understood. What did he understand? He's not the God. Did he change his ways? Allah ends the verse by saying this. وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Allah does not allow, does not guide those people who are the dhalimin. We explained this concept in a few sessions ago. What did we say? We said when Allah says this, He's saying that I am the cause of all causes. I am the one who set for you this system where you have two ears to your heart. You have two landing strips in your heart. If you develop the non-divine landing strip, then that's the only cargo you're gonna get. I'm the one that has made this cause and effect system come into place. When Allah says, La yahdi qawm al-dhalimin, He's saying it's me who's placed this system before you. That if you develop the wrong landing strip, then don't complain. The effect will follow the cause. If you do dhulm, then you fall under this particular ending of this phrase. Wallahu la yahdil qawm al-zalimin. If you do dhulm, if you transgress, if you give in to waswas, if you develop the non-divine landing strip in your heart, you allow that non-divine cargo to land, you yourself are setting yourself up for failure. The cause and effect relationship, Allah is saying, I've made this in this particular manner. Salawat, please. That's one type of a discussion. The extrinsic one, the one from the outside, the one where it takes you all the way to just the presence of the mind. Let's look at the second type of discussion. There are two, right, on the board? Oh, there's not on the board anymore. There are two. There's an intrinsic one as well. The discussion we were supposed to discuss today was the extrinsic and the intrinsic. Let's look at the intrinsic one. In the extrinsic one, who was the audience? It was other people who didn't believe yet. You tried, Brahmins were there and atheists were there and so on and so forth. You had to use your intellect and go and prove the existence of these things and so on and so forth. Who's the audience for the intrinsic discussion of Imamate, the intrinsic discussion of our root belief systems? We ourselves, our heart is the audience. Okay? Who's the speaker? Who's the one addressing the heart? We ourselves are addressing ourselves. It's an intrinsic discussion. Okay? You're no longer asking the audience to submit intellectually. You're not saying, I'm going to give you the proofs. Here are the proofs. Now submit to my proofs intellectually. You're no longer asking for that. You're saying, I want you to submit your heart. You're no longer asking for the presence of the mind. You're now asking for the presence of the heart. This is the second type of discussion that we have in our aqaid. An intrinsic discussion on our root belief systems. Remember the example of the bookshelf? You're no longer just looking at the booklet and memorizing it. You're now starting to put the pieces together. There is an actuality now to this particular bookshelf. It's not just an image, a construct in your mind. It's gaining reality. It's becoming real. It's coming about and out of that box and into your living room. It's becoming real. Okay. But if you really want to put the pieces together for this bookshelf, before you bring everything out of the box, you want to make sure you have a clean place to bring everything out, right? You don't want the pieces to be missing. So you start this particular discussion with yourself by cleaning up the place a little bit. Where is this discussion taking place? It's between you and your heart. So what's the place that you start to clean up? You start to clean up that place where you want to invite this divine wilaya into. The first step at getting rid of waswas in this discussion is a strong and lasting resolve towards tawbah. You make a strong resolve and you say, I understand. I have the conceptual understanding. I understand the presence of the mind. I know theoretically and according to my intellect, there is a God, there is a Nabi, there is the origin, there is the destination, there is the in-between. Now you tell yourself, I have to now let that actualize in my heart. We start cleaning. So I have to first make sure the place where I'm inviting these divine concepts in is worthy of that place. Otherwise, they won't come, no matter how hard you drag them in. Remember the example of the two landing strips. This cargo simply can't come if you haven't made the right landing strip for it. So I start with a strong resolve for tawbah. What is tawbah? Is to turn away. What am I turning and towards what am I turning? I'm turning away from a lower level and towards a higher level. This Tawbah, technically speaking, it exists even in heaven. If you want to elevate, if you want to rise, this rising is done by means of this letting go of the lower level and going towards the higher level. It doesn't just exist at the bottom of the well of sins. It exists at the highest levels of the boundless skies as well. And that's why in our du'as we have the Imams still doing tawbah. It's not limited to the lowest levels of the well of sins. It's the letting go of the lower and going towards the higher. Okay. So now I know one thing. I know waswas has a particular effect, and that effect is it causes me to transgress. It causes me to break bounds. I saw that in other places in the past lecture. We saw the action, the relationships, the root belief system. In this particular case too, waswas will probably ask me to do the same thing. It'll ask me to transgress. So if I want to clean my heart of this termite, I want to get rid of these waswas, what do I have to do? Well, I analyze my 24 hours. And I say, did I transgress today or not? Before I go to sleep, I look at my 24 hours. I said, did I transgress today or not? If I did, I go back to my original pledge. I said, what? I'm going to do a strong tawbah. I said, Allah, I made a mistake. I'm still committed to my strong pledge of allegiance. I'm committed to being in the tent of Abu Abdullah. I don't want to leave it. I'm steadfast in my tawbah. So before I go to sleep, if I've transgressed, I do my repentance. I do istighfar. This is muhasabah. The next day comes. I knew I fell to some of those termites yesterday, and I ended up transgressing. I made some mistakes. I yelled where I shouldn't have yelled. I saw things where I shouldn't have seen things. I heard things that I shouldn't have heard. Next day comes, and I'm still committed to being in the tent of Abu Abdullah. I don't want to leave this tent. Remember, what did we say? There is no life without Abu Abdullah. That's what the brother recited before we started. That's a true statement. For us who have the wudda, for us who have the love of Abu Abdullah, if you separate us from the source of our love, that is the source of our life too. So I don't want to leave this tent. The next day comes, I remember that these termites got me yesterday. I make a better plan today to wipe them out. I am not going to transgress today. This is musharata. Now you're making a shart with yourself. Today, I'm not going to let those termites get to me. A believer is not stung by the same hole twice, by the same snake twice. This particular termite got me yesterday. I'm not going to let him get me today. Musharata. Then throughout the day, I'm vigilant. I'm careful. Am I transgressing anywhere? This is muhasabah. These three make the first step towards this intrinsic discussion about our root belief system. These three allow us to now open the packaging of this bookshelf and start to now construct it. So that what? This bookshelf can then have an actual effect. Without these, simply the presence of the mind, I guarantee you Shaitan has a better presence of the mind than all of us here combined. We lose focus. He's sharp. We are one person. He's attentive over each of us. Presence of the mind simply was not enough. Salawat, please. So now, practically speaking, in my 24 hours, how do I make it such that I start unboxing this particular bookshelf? Okay, I committed to saying Tawbah. I'm trying to do Muraqabah, Musharata, Muhasabah, the way you described, Syed. Okay, now what? I'm trying now. These are passive things that are going by. Sometimes active, sometimes passive. I'm vigilant. Vigilance is not active in nature, it's a passive state. I'm vigilant. Remember we talked about relationships and waswas affects those? The next level where I want to remove this waswas after I've made a commitment to remove it from my heart is in those relationships. Starting from what? The relationship between me and my creator. That's the first relationship, by the way, Imam Sajjad mentions in Risalatul Huquq. So if I have now qaza salah, if I have now qaza fast, if I have now a due on me between me and Allah, I haven't paid my khums, let's say, I make a proper plan towards fixing that. This is taking the intrinsic discussion further now. If you commit to it and you act upon it, you're now creating that bookshelf. The more you act, the more you're creating. Aside from this, I do three things as well. Firstly, I'm a servant. I'm a slave of Allah. So I listen to Allah. Secondly, He's my master. So I speak to Him. And thirdly, how did I get to Allah? What led me to the origin again? Don't forget, our root belief systems were three. They were interconnected. It was the divine wali which guided me towards the right destination, which was Tawheed. I can't forget that. Otherwise, that's waswas as well. But then a third thing I do is I'm attentive towards the wali as well. How does that play out? Some ways that it could play out: to listen to Allah. I make sure that not a day goes by that I don't recite the Holy Quran. If I don't know how to read properly, that's okay. I'll read one letter. If that's my max capacity, if all I can get by is one letter, it can't be lower than that, right? That's what I'm going to stick to. But I won't let it actively, will not let it, that a day goes by and I haven't touched the holy book. But I'm also a slave of Allah. I want to talk to Him. Can I just talk to Him the way I want to talk to Him? Yes, you can. That's a good start. You can do that. Is there a prescribed method too? Of course. Who prescribes the method to go back to the origin? The divine wali. the divine wilaya now comes and gives us certain du'as. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, salawat please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He comes and he gives us du'as for every day of the week. They're very short. One method that I can now talk to my Rabb every single day is by performing these. In the beginning, it'll be hard. Look at the Arabic translation. But slowly, I'm delving into the meaning. Do I want to just stick to the appearance of it and the Arabic of it without understanding what the meaning is? Remember the stop sign example. You're given the tools already to be able to sink these concepts in now. Was the appearance of the stop sign enough for me to now stop my car? Or did I have to go down to the meaning of the stop sign for it to cause an effect? But look at these daily du'as. Look at one line of it. It's okay. And the third thing was what? Who led me here? It was a divine wali. At the very least, on a day goes by that I don't say salam to the imam of my time. That's the lowest level. If I want to go higher, again, there have been ziyarat for the day divided up. Saturday is a day for the Holy Prophet. Sunday is a day for Imam Ali and Sayyidah Fatima. Monday is a day for Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, and so on and so forth. Thursday being the day for Imam Hassan al-Askari, and Friday being the day for the 12th Imam. So I go and I perform these ziyarat as well. Now I'm furthering that intrinsic discussion on Imamah. It's not a conceptual thing. It doesn't exist as a presence of the mind. It's starting to become the presence of the heart. When does it become the presence of the heart? When I associate with the meaning behind these. The more my association increases, the more my interaction and understanding of the meaning increases, the more present that meaning is in my heart. What is the heart? The heart is the epicenter where meanings are formed and maintained. We look at one example from history now, where somebody who didn't just get stuck at the words themselves, even the most commonly heard words for this particular person weren't common when they were coming from his master. We see one effect of that today. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. The Habib of Hussein. Tonight is the night we remember the Habib of Hussein. When Habib sees that his master is not safe, before Ashura itself, once he's joined the Imam, he sees the Imam is not safe. There are very few who are around the Imam to defend him. He approaches his Imam and asks for permission. He says, "O Mawla, can I please go to the tribe of the Bani Asad? I want to get help from them and get support from them, so that together we can defend you." The Imam gives him permission and he goes. He approaches the Bani Asad, he talks to them, he convinces a lot of them. And now they're deciding to come towards the tent of Abu Abdullah. But the enemies of Allah get word. Imam Hussein is about to get reinforcements from the Bani Asad. Umar ibn Sa'ad, this mal'oon, comes forward. And he stops this group from approaching Abu Abdullah. Now Habib comes back to Imam Hussein. He tells Imam Hussein, Abu Abdullah, he's worried. He's seeing his master surrounded by the enemies. This is not a superficial love that he has for his Mawla. It's a real one. He worries for his Mawla more than he worries for his own life. He tells his master, I went to the Bani Asad. I tried to get the people and I was on my way back when the enemies of Islam stopped us. I was forced to return alone to you, Mawla. I'm still worried for you and I'm scared of what will happen now. Habib's Mawla now, Habib's master, sees the situation and replies with one line we often remember and repeat. Abu Abdullah says what to Habib? He says, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Now the divine leader is pointing toward the right destination, which is the return to the origin. Habib, look at him, what happens to him? When he's worried, all of a sudden, the second he remembers and hears his Mawla speak to him this particular line, this line goes straight to his heart. He connects with the meaning of this line. We have narrated in history, he becomes completely calm. This line doesn't just have the presence of the mind for Habib. It goes beyond. It has the presence of the heart for him. One line from you is enough, Ya Hussein. Together now in the tent of Abu Abdullah, we're calling to our master. One line from you is enough, Ya Hussein. When's caught in a storm of sin, I find refuge in you, Ya Hussein. One look from you, it makes it so, Ya Hussein. A speck so low turns to the sun so high, Ya Hussein. So please hold my hand, Mawla, as I start to walk to thee, Ya Hussein. I ask for the sake of your Habib, one immersed in your love, Ya Hussein. So please hold my hand, Mawla, as I start to walk to thee, Ya Hussein.